Vaccination story by Jazmine Valesquez.
Coming into the year of 2021, I have just settled at the Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, where I spent a seamlessly never-ending and chilly 3.5 years in Anchorage, Alaska. My last few months seemed like so isolated and obviously quite lonely. The pandemic just hit last March, and by now I'm expected to uproot my entire life amidst a global pandemic and move over 3,000 miles away. I had no idea what to expect. Besides Alaska, I really have only ever been stationed in Texas, as I did all my training there, and I had no idea what to think about my new East Coast assignment. Stepping off the plane and into Newport News, Virginia, I was greeted by an old friend and a coworker who had been stationed there a year prior to my arrival. He grabbed my bags and showed me to his car, and he drove me to his apartment where he graciously allowed me to stay until I found a place of my own. He began to explain to me that
everyone wears a mask at work and even outside while working on the jets, and there is a zero-tolerance policy on wearing them.
Honestly, this was a huge difference compared to the rules in Alaska. Yes, COVID-19 was still present there, but not anywhere near the extent it was in the lower 48. Back in Alaska, we really only had to wear masks inside. But let's be honest, that was a very laissez-faire rule. And we were working 1 week on and 1 week off, so we had very limited contact with anyone who wasn't on our assigned shift. So we were able to keep our COVID numbers down to very little or none at all. So now, familiar with the new set of rules I was to abide by, I went to work with a new, more cautious mindset. My first few months were a whirlwind. 2 months in, and I was still not familiar with how my coworkers looked or sounded like. It was a funny experience seeing how my coworkers would look when they were out eating or walking out of work and looking like nothing how I imagined them. By this time, I was very comfortable wearing a mask and didn't really mind it much. As a group of my coworkers and I were constantly preached to about
wearing a mask, social distancing, and staying at home when not at work,
as we were deemed essential workers and did not have the option of working from home. Oddly, in the same breath, my flight chief told me about
I am planning a rank-changing ceremony for some of our upper leadership, and I expect all of you to help set up.
And please take note that while he was briefing us to
wear a mask, social distance,
he had us in a huddle and spoke without his mask on. The next day, I showed up early to assist with handing out the awards, and my flight chief was barking orders without a mask on yet again, and he was very close to me as well. It was to no one's surprise that the following day, after the ceremony, he was
all sick.
And the next day after that, confirmed with
COVID-19.
Obviously very annoyed and scared that he more than likely exposed me during the ceremony, I asked my other flight chiefs if I should get tested. As Thanksgiving was quickly approaching, I wanted to make sure that I would be fine to celebrate with a few friends in my new apartment, as I loved to cook and was eager to host. I was told that
unless you have any symptoms, you cannot be tested.
So I reluctantly went to work for a few days. And one morning, like a freight train had absolutely plummeted me into the ground, I could not get out of bed. I texted my flight chiefs and told them that I would not be coming into work as I needed to go to the hospital because something was very wrong. And to no one's surprise,
he tested positive for COVID
and had to spend the entire Thanksgiving week alone. Very upset and disappointed that I had to spend the entire holiday alone, I notified my friends at work and they had to get tested, and to no one's surprise,
all came back positive.
The feeling of having no breath to take my dog out to pee for 5 minutes was horrifying. I was glued to my bed and choking down Mucinex D and Tessalon pearls to help with the extreme congestion and cough I was facing. Not to mention losing all taste and smell. I got to the point where I didn't even want to eat anything because everything just tasted like warm mush. No flavors, no smells, just a horrible culinary experience. If I ever wanted to get back to any of my enemies, cursing them with the loss of taste and smell would be significant punishment. Eventually, after a trip to the ER due to chest pains and high fever, I prevailed and got better. After suffering through this horrible virus, I became more vigilant than ever. So for the rest of 2020, I became
a huge advocate for being a human-sized bottle of Lysol.
And I took the pandemic more serious than ever. I will be the first to admit, I didn't take it so serious as the environment I was in didn't make me feel like it was an issue. And it really wasn't until I experienced it myself that I understood the gravity of the situation. Come January 2021, I got an email about the new COVID-19 vaccine becoming available for high-risk and elderly people. Curious to see if I was able to get it, at the base hospital, I completed the COVID vaccine form that was attached to the email and delivered it to my flight chiefs. Since this was still very new and everyone was unsure of my eligibility to get it, but we were considered essential workers, so I was advised to
go try your chances of receiving the vaccine.
So essentially, I was the guinea pig for my entire squadron when it came to getting vaccinated. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with COVID-19 anymore. So I bravely received the virus and the vaccine and got left feeling victorious with no complications. Getting the vaccine was never a question for me. I started my college career as a biology major, but quickly shifted gears when I saw all the math that would have to be required of me. And full disclosure, I am terrible at math. So I switched gears to my real talent and passions. So needless to say, I will always be a believer of peer-reviewed science methods taken to create the Pfizer vaccine. I received my first dose in February 2021, my second dose in March 2021, and I just received my booster January 2022. Receiving the vaccine was never a question for me. Was I nervous about receiving something so quickly created for this new strain of virus?
Yes.
Did I believe the military would ever give me something that wasn't safe?
No.
Did I ever want to get COVID again?
Definitely not.
Let me not forget to tell you that my mother was an individual at very high risk if she ever contracted COVID. My mother has a history of getting pneumonia and has ongoing asthma issues. Thankfully, I was the only person in my immediate family to ever get COVID. And I didn't want to spend the upcoming holidays without being vaccinated and potentially exposing her. Strangely, I was grateful for my experience with COVID, as I really don't think I would have taken it as seriously if I never got it. But the environment that I was in, I chose to stay ignorant because it wasn't an issue. Vaccination is a very important factor in my life now. It dictates the way I participate in school, where I go out to eat at restaurants, and it chooses whether or not I will go out on a date with somebody. I believe getting the vaccine is the most selfless and important thing a person could do in these times we live in, and it should be promoted on an even greater scale.